The most dangerous people are the ones you never suspect. They don't hide in the shadows. They don't wear blood-stained gloves or grin through broken teeth. They sit across from you in meetings. They smile at family gatherings. They charm your friends, compliment your children, and offer a helping hand when you least expect it. And that's exactly what makes them so terrifying. For decades, society painted the psychopath as an obvious monster, a crazed killer, a violent outcast, a ticking time bomb with no impulse control. But Dr. Hervey Cleckley shattered that illusion. In his groundbreaking book, The Mask of Sanity, he revealed a darker truth. The psychopath isn't the lunatic in the alley. It's often the well-dressed executive in the boardroom. The doctor, the spouse, the neighbor who waves to you every morning. Psychopaths don't look broken. They don't sound insane. They don't set off alarms. Instead, they wear a flawless disguise, a mask of politeness, intellect, and charm that hides a disturbing emptiness underneath. And the scariest part? That mask doesn't crack. It adapts. What Cleckley found was unsettling. These individuals could talk about love, morality, and empathy with absolute conviction, and feel none of it. They were fluent in the language of being human, but emotionally hollow. No guilt, no connection, no conscience, just a perfect replica of normalcy, weaponized. So what happens when someone can fake being human better than most actual humans? Let's find out. The myth of the killer. We've all seen the movie version. The psychopath, as Hollywood sells, it is a blood-soaked lunatic grinning in the moonlight, knife in hand, eyes wild with madness. He stalks, he kills, he cackles. He's the boogeyman with a body count, and you always know who he is the second he walks on screen. But what if that image is not only wrong? What if it's dangerously misleading? The truth is, most psychopaths don't look anything like that. They're not unhinged murderers hiding in dark alleys. In fact, they're often hiding in plain sight. They're clean-shaven, well-spoken, and shockingly likable. The real psychopath might be your favorite coworker, the one who always knows exactly what to say, who laughs at the right time, who seems effortlessly confident and totally composed. He might be the guy you voted for, or worse, the one you're dating. Dr. Hervey Cleckley was among the first to expose this disconnect. What he found after years of clinical observation is that most psychopaths don't behave in the ways we expect. They don't always kill. They don't necessarily commit crimes. They don't foam at the mouth or scream into the void. Instead, they function, sometimes better than the rest of us. They build careers, they lead teams, they throw dinner parties and make eye contact and say all the right things. They are, on the surface, model citizens. And that's exactly what makes them so hard to detect. Psychopathy, as Cleckley defined it, isn't about violence. It's about absence. The absence of emotional depth, the absence of empathy, the absence of guilt or remorse. The real psychopath doesn't need to break the law to do damage. He can devastate a relationship, poison a team, or manipulate an entire organization, all while smiling and shaking your hand. So while society keeps scanning for monsters, the real danger may already be in the room, dressed for success, speaking your language, and waiting patiently for your trust. Hervey Cleckley's revelation. In 1941, a quiet revolution in psychiatry began with the publication of a book that most people have never heard of, but should fear more than any horror novel. The Mask of Sanity, written by Dr. Hervey Cleckley, didn't just redefine what a psychopath is. It pulled back the curtain on one of the most unsettling truths in modern psychology. The most dangerous minds aren't always violent, mad, or visibly unstable. They're just empty. Cleckley's work was born from decades of clinical observation. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't writing theory. He was documenting what he saw, again and again, in patient after patient, who presented a baffling contradiction. People who seem perfectly sane, articulate, composed, intelligent, yet whose actions revealed something deeply wrong. They didn't hallucinate, they weren't delusional, they didn't scream, flinch, or unravel like textbook cases of mental illness. In fact, they often came across as more put together than most. That's what made them so eerie. What Cleckley found is now considered foundational. Psychopaths are not mentally ill in the traditional sense. They don't suffer from psychosis. They aren't disconnected from reality. On the contrary, they see reality all too clearly. They understand how people work, what society expects, and how to perform the role of a normal human being with frightening precision. But underneath that role is a void. Psychopaths simulate what they do not feel. They don't experience empathy, remorse, or love, but they know what those things are supposed to look like. They've studied human behavior like a second language and speak it fluently, even though they're emotionally tone-deaf. Their expressions of concern, their smiles, their warmth, none of it is real. It's a carefully crafted performance, a puppet show, and the mask. It rarely slips. What Cleckley exposed is that psychopathy is not a disorder of chaos. It's a disorder of imitation. They don't appear dangerous because their facade is seamless. They say the right things. They dress the part. They seem responsible, sometimes even admirable. But it's all a projection. Behind that polished exterior isn't a tortured soul, but an emotional blank slate, a walking replica of humanity, without the humanity, and that's what makes them so terrifying. The charm that deceives. If you're thinking that someone this emotionally empty would be easy to spot, robotic, awkward, or creepy, think again. One of the most terrifying aspects of the psychopath, as Hervey Cleckley emphasized, is their ability to appear more emotionally intelligent than the average person. Not only do they pass as normal, they often pass as exceptional. Psychopaths aren't stiff or socially off-key. They're often charming, funny, persuasive. They know how to listen, or at least how to appear like they're listening. They say the right words with perfect timing. They mimic empathy so well that many people, including trained mental health professionals, mistake them for deeply compassionate individuals. They might tear up at the story of a tragedy, offer comfort to a grieving friend, or deliver a rousing speech about ethics, all without feeling a single thing. This isn't just an act performed on the surface. It's not about faking a few smiles or mimicking tears. It's a full-body performance. Their posture, their voice, their facial expressions, all choreographed. They observe what behaviors evoke trust, what tone of voice calms, what facial expression disarms. Then they rehearse those moves until they become second nature. They become emotional actors in a play only they know is fiction. And here's the catch. It works. Because the performance is so smooth, so consistent, it doesn't trigger our natural alarm bells. We're wired to trust people who look and sound the part, who make eye contact, who nod in the right places, who express sympathy with confidence and ease. The psychopath's entire personality is designed to slide past your defenses, to make you feel safe, understood, even valued. They don't stumble when talking about morality. In fact, they often speak eloquently about right and wrong. They can sound like philosophers, advocates, even saints. But it's all mimicry. Their understanding of values is mechanical, not emotional. They know the rules, but they don't feel why they matter. And that distinction between speaking the truth and feeling it is what most people miss, even professionals, even the people trained to detect lies and mental illness. Cleckley himself admitted that this was what made diagnosing a psychopath so uniquely difficult, because the outward signs all pointed to normalcy, intelligence, social grace, even charm. But inside, there was nothing. Not rage, not sadness, not a hidden trauma waiting to be healed. Just a cold, calculating machine wearing a flawless human mask. And that's the real horror. The better the performance, the more invisible the danger becomes. The cold core. Once you peel away the mask, If you ever get that close, what you'll find isn't anger, it isn't trauma, it isn't hidden suffering. What you'll find is something much more disturbing, a cold, pristine absence, not a broken heart, but an empty room, a silence that doesn't mourn or scream, just is. This is the core of the psychopath. Not rage, not conflict, not torment, but an emotional flatline. They don't feel love. They don't feel guilt. They don't feel remorse. And what's truly horrifying is that they know they don't. They just don't care. There's no inner turmoil about it, no self-reflection, no desire to fix it. Why would they? As far as they're concerned, they're functioning perfectly. That's what separates them from someone who is emotionally repressed or wounded. A trauma survivor may struggle with emotions, but they still have them. A depressed person may feel numb, but the absence of feeling causes pain, confusion, a sense of loss. The psychopath, on the other hand, doesn't feel the absence because they've never had those emotions to begin with. This isn't repression, it's structural. You can't miss something you never knew. You can't feel guilt if you've never experienced moral conflict. You can't long for connection if you've never felt a true bond. And so the psychopath moves through the world with the efficiency of a machine, reading, adapting, performing, but never engaging. This emotional void is what makes their mimicry so chilling. They can say, "I love you," with perfect conviction, not because they mean it, but because they've studied what love is supposed to look like. They've watched the gestures, memorized the cadence, mimicked the smile. It's all a script. They can deliver the lines better than a seasoned actor. But behind the performance, there's no emotional resonance, no echo, no warmth. They don't feel the sting of betrayal, only the inconvenience of losing control. They don't regret hurting someone, only that it might make them look bad. They don't feel sorrow at the end of a relationship, only that they have to waste time finding a new source of utility. Every interaction is transactional. Every emotion is a tool. Every person is a resource. And the coldest part? They're not haunted by this. They sleep just fine at night. There are no late-night spirals, no moral dilemmas, no shame. They are as serene as a shark gliding through water, not because they've made peace with their emptiness, but because it never occurred to them that anything was missing in the first place. How they rise. Here's the twist no one wants to admit. The very traits that define a psychopath, the emotional detachment, the ruthless focus, the lack of empathy, are often rewarded by society, not punished, not spotted and stopped, but praised, promoted, clapped for on stage. In the corporate world, in politics, in high-stakes leadership roles, what looks like excellence can often be something far more sinister in disguise. The psychopath doesn't succeed in spite of their condition. They succeed because of it. Their confidence is unwavering, but it's not the fragile self-belief of someone trying to overcome doubt. It's the calm certainty of someone who feels nothing. They never second-guess. They never pause to consider how others might feel. That kind of boldness, that apparent decisiveness, is often mistaken for leadership. In a crisis, while others hesitate, empathize, or consult, the psychopath acts fast. Not because they're insightful, but because they're unaffected. They can fire employees without blinking, end relationships without regret, make cold decisions without guilt, and society, from the outside, sees this as strength. He's tough. She doesn't let emotions get in the way. They make the hard calls, but beneath that polished performance is a vacuum. What appears as objectivity is actually emotional absence. What reads as cool-headedness is often the result of having no emotional skin in the game. Psychopaths don't lose sleep over moral grey zones because they don't see them. Every decision is strategic. Every move is calculated for maximum personal gain, not collective good. And because they don't crumble under emotional pressure, they rise. Promotions come faster. Doors open easier. They impress in interviews, dominate in negotiations, speak with precision and poise. Their social mask is tailor-fit for the environments that prize image over substance. In public life, especially politics or entertainment, this becomes even more dangerous. The camera loves confidence. Audiences love certainty. Charisma, no matter how hollow our cells. And so the psychopath who can mimic charm, deliver perfect sound bites, and smile without sincerity often rises further than those weighed down by a conscience. The disturbing irony is that society, unintentionally, becomes complicit. We reward the mask, we applaud it, we elect it, we make it CEO, we share its posts, and all the while, we remain unaware that behind the applause is a person who sees admiration not as validation, but as leverage. So the mask tightens, the applause grows louder, and the real danger goes completely unnoticed. Weaponized empathy. What happens when someone can read your emotions better than you can, but doesn't feel a single one of them? This is where the psychopath becomes more than a performer. They become a predator. Not in the way you'd expect, and no overt threat, no confrontation, no violence. Instead, they use the most human thing about you, your need for connection, your longing to be understood, against you. Psychopaths are masters of what might be called emotional mimicry. While they don't experience emotions in the way you do, they observe them with scientific precision. They study the way your voice breaks when you're nervous, the way your hands fidget when you're lying, the way your eyes light up when someone really gets you. And once they know what you respond to, they reflect it back at you like a mirror, not to connect, but to control. This is weaponized empathy. Not empathy felt, but empathy simulated. They act like they care. They repeat your words with a soft tone. They nod in just the right way, ask thoughtful questions, even share vulnerable stories. Carefully chosen, rehearsed, and emotionally hollow. And you let your guard down. You start to believe you've met someone who finally understands you. But what you're actually experiencing isn't intimacy, it's data collection. Psychopaths are emotional engineers. Your secrets, your insecurities, your desires. They catalog all of it, not to build closeness, but to use it later. If you're insecure about abandonment, they'll subtly reassure you, and then vanish at the worst time. If you seek approval, they'll shower you with praise, and slowly withhold it until you're hooked. They don't need to force you to submit. They'll make you offer the leash. That's the trick. Control without control. You won't even realize what's happening, because it won't feel like manipulation. It will feel like a deep connection, like they see you, like you finally found someone who understands the parts of you no one else does. But that emotional seduction isn't love, it's leverage. And once you trust them, once you confide in them, they own you, not physically, psychologically. You gave them the blueprint to your emotional defenses, and now they know exactly how to bypass everyone. They don't have to raise their voice. They don't have to issue threats. All they have to do is withdraw, disapprove, suggest, and suddenly you're adjusting your behavior, questioning your instincts, apologizing when you did nothing wrong. Not because they told you to, but because you want to win back their approval. That's the genius of it. Psychopaths don't demand obedience. They inspire it. You'll think it's your idea. You'll hand over your boundaries, your privacy, your emotional autonomy, thinking you're building something real, but you're not. You're playing a part in a script they've written, and the final scene always ends the same, with them walking away untouched, and you wondering what the hell just happened. Disposable relationships. The moment you stop being useful to a psychopath, the illusion shatters. Not with drama, not with an explosion, but with something far more brutal. Silence. You'll notice it in the smallest things at first. The warmth in their voice goes flat. The messages come slower. The compliments stop. The charm dissolves, and what remains is a sudden, hollow absence. No explanation. No closure. Just nothing. You've been deleted, not as a person, but as a file that no longer serves a purpose. To a psychopath, relationships aren't built on connection. They're built on utility. You're not a friend, a lover, or a partner. You're a resource. a tool, an access point to something they want: validation, money, status, power, protection, entertainment. And when that purpose expires, so do you. There is no mourning, no second thoughts, no nostalgic scrolling through old texts or sleepless nights of regret. The psychopath doesn't look back. They don't grieve the loss of a connection that never truly existed for them. That moment you thought was real, that night you felt seen, that tearful confession, that shared laughter. It wasn't a memory to them. It was a tactic, and now the tactic is obsolete. This is what makes the betrayal so devastating. You might spend weeks, months, even years trying to make sense of why they changed, why they left, why they suddenly went cold. You'll question yourself, replay conversations, blame your own actions. But what you'll never quite grasp until you learn the truth is that they never changed. They were always like this. The version you loved wasn't real. It was a character, played perfectly, until the role was no longer needed. Psychopaths don't end relationships like most people do, with pain, conflict, or reluctant detachment. They vanish, or worse, they betray. Sometimes they disappear overnight, ghosting without a word. Other times, they twist the knife on their way out, leaking secrets, shifting blame, turning others against you. Not out of spite, but efficiency, a final extraction of value before they move on. And move on they will, always. The psychopath is a restless predator. Once they've drained everything useful from one relationship, they're already scanning the room for the next. They need new targets like oxygen, not because they're emotionally attached, but because their emptiness is insatiable. Every conquest is a temporary fix for a void they don't even recognize. So they repeat the cycle, again and again. Seduce, use, discard. And each time, they refine the process. The lies get smoother, the charm sharper, the exit cleaner. While you're left with confusion and heartbreak, they're already smiling at someone new, saying all the same things, using all the same tricks. To them, love is a transaction, intimacy is leverage, and loyalty is a liability. You weren't abandoned because you failed. You were abandoned because the performance was over. You were never seen as irreplaceable, just replaceable. And now the curtain has fallen. But for them, the next act has already begun. The hollow cycle. From the outside, they look like adventurers, people who are always chasing the next big thing. New jobs, new cities, new relationships. They move fast, they reinvent themselves. They seem driven, ambitious, maybe even a little spontaneous. But if you watch closely, you'll start to see the pattern. It's not growth, it's escape. Psychopaths live in constant motion, not because they crave new experiences, but because stillness threatens to reveal the one thing they fear above all, the unbearable emptiness inside. While most people grow roots, build bonds, and seek meaning, the psychopath runs. Not from something that happened in the past, but from the present moment itself, from the vacuum where emotional life should be. This cycle of reinvention isn't fueled by trauma. It's not the result of a damaged soul trying to heal. It's the natural byproduct of someone who feels absolutely nothing and must manufacture stimulation just to feel alive. But here's the catch. Nothing ever works. No relationship is fulfilling. No achievement is enough. No environment is stimulating for long. So they chase, not joy, not passion, but distraction. They change lovers like outfits, switch careers at the peak of success, drop lifelong friends without a backward glance, not because of conflict, not because they were wronged, simply because they're bored. And boredom for a psychopath isn't the mild restlessness most of us feel. It's a chronic void, a constant itch that can never be scratched. They can't sit in silence because silence reveals the hollowness. They can't stay still because there's nothing inside to anchor them. So they keep moving, keep acquiring, keep discarding, like a shark, that has to keep swimming or die. But they're not hunting to feed hunger. They're hunting to avoid the truth. This is the paradox. They seem like people of high energy, full of passion and direction. But in reality, they're stuck in a loop, cycling through identities, relationships, and experiences in a desperate attempt to stay one step ahead of the nothingness. They're dynamic on the outside, but frozen on the inside, going everywhere and getting nowhere. Their entire life becomes a series of short-lived performances. New faces applaud them, new partners fall for them, new crowds believe in them, but none of it sticks, none of it satisfies, because nothing real can take root in emotional soil that doesn't exist. And so they repeat. The hollow cycle spins again. If you confront them, they won't understand. They won't reflect. They'll blame you. They'll move on faster than you can process what happened. Because to them, it's not a pattern. It's just life. This is who they are. No past to reconcile. No inner world to explore. No guilt. No longing. No pause. Just constant motion around a center that was never there. The mask wins. We like to believe evil wears a warning sign. That manipulation has a look. That people with no conscience are easy to spot. But the truth is far more unsettling. Not only are they hard to recognize, they may be the very people we trust, follow, and even admire, because the psychopath isn't a glitch in the system. They might be its most perfect product. Think about the world we live in. What gets rewarded? Charm, confidence, performance, the ability to keep calm under pressure, the capacity to make tough decisions without emotion, the power to persuade, to win, to lead, all while looking polished and unshakable. These aren't just traits we tolerate. We celebrate them, we promote them, we elect them. Now ask yourself, who fits that mold better than a psychopath? In a society obsessed with appearance over authenticity, image over integrity, the mask doesn't just work, it wins. And while most people are busy trying to be good, the psychopath focuses on looking good. That's the game, and they're playing it without guilt, without fear, and without hesitation. We built a world where emotional detachment is called professionalism, where ruthlessness is mistaken for strength, where manipulation, when subtle enough, is rewarded as influence. So it shouldn't surprise us that people who lack empathy, who were never burdened by moral restraint, thrive in systems that value outcome over intention. The psychopath doesn't need to break the rules. They simply rise within them. They don't need to use force. They use charm. They don't need to deceive with lies. They do it with personality. And the scariest part, they believe they're winning. Because, by all visible standards, they are. Behind every promotion, every round of applause, every follower gained, they feel no pride, no connection, no warmth, only calculation. What can this get me next? People are pieces, emotions are leverage, and trust is a door they walk through, not a bond they honor. Hervey Cleckley saw this long before most people even had language for it. He saw that the real danger wasn't the psychopath hiding in the shadows. It was the one standing in the spotlight, smiling, shaking hands, delivering the perfect speech, wearing a mask so polished, so practiced, that no one thought to question what was underneath. So here's the final haunting question. If the most dangerous people are the ones you never suspect, how would you know if the person closest to you wears one?